Hey parents, Tim Wright here, and we have a show so big today, I'm a little concerned it'll even stick to the tape. Today we have not just one New York Times bestselling author with us, our good friend Michael Gurian. We have two with us today. Our guest today wrote a book back in the early 90s, was one of the top selling books in the 1990s, still going strong to this day. If you've ever heard the phrase men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or you've read the book, or you've heard about the book, that's the guy we have with us today, Dr. John Gray. And just to complete the trifecta, I've read some New York Times best-selling books. So you've got a power-packed episode coming up today. And if you're wondering, how can they bring us something so powerful for free? It's because we've got this great sponsor. And we just want to thank them for making it possible for us to bring the show to you today. We are brought to you by Army and Navy Academy. And the Army and Navy Academy isn't just a school, it's a transformational experience. And they are a Gurian school, Center for Excellence. They use neurobiological research to help boys reach their full potential. Through structured academics, leadership training, and strong mentorship, boys develop confidence and skills that last a lifetime. Without the distraction of personal digital devices during the academic day, they foster deep learning and meaningful connections. Located on the Pacific Ocean in Carlsbad, California, they prepare young men for success in college and beyond. You can learn more at armyandnavyacademy.org. That's armyandnavyacademy.org. And Michael, I know that you're not only a fan of Dr. John Gray, you are a colleague. And so I thought I would give you the opportunity for you to sort of introduce him to our audience.
I absolutely will. Thank you, Tim. And thanks, John, for being here. So when I was chatting with John the other day, I was saying really, to some extent, it's because of what John did that people like me can do what I do, which is, so thank you, John, for that. John started out doing it through a observational context, let's say, and of course he's going to tell you much more. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and over the decades he's also become a master of the brain research, brain and hormonal research. So what's going on with male-female difference, and so I mean I don't know if people need introduction to John Gray, but he was on Oprah multiple times, and he's kind of he's iconic, really. So Dr. John Gray, welcome to our show.
Michael, a real pleasure. real pleasure.
John, so that's a big deal.
Well, as well, I want to say, Michael Gurian, that as you continued looking into all the research, it certainly inspired me to look into the research. And it was very important that we have the biological differences between males and females, boys and girls, men and women. Why that's so important is because there's been such a agenda to say that men and women are really pretty much the same. And, there was a positive side of this, which is it gave women more freedom, particularly when women are in a marriage, which is feel trapped in a marriage, being dependent on a man who is not supportive. They didn't have the freedom to step away. And now with greater opportunities for independence for women, they've just taken off, which is great. But the challenge is what I write about now is the ideas of Men Are From Mars are still there, but a bit out of date in terms of the problems that it solves. If you're, what I find is people who actually are married, who have children, and they hear the ideas that men and women are different, they all go, yeah. And I remember once in one of my seminars back in the day, 35 years ago, a feminist in the audience was saying, as I'm talking about differences between men and women, I hate everything you say, but I've got a boy and a girl, and I've tried to raise them the same, but they are just not the same. So, if you're a parent, you can see these things. But there's a lot of people who aren't parents or don't have this experience, and they really just intellectually look at and go, well, we can all be the same, and culture certainly affects us. And I know you face this over and over, Michael, which is people always say, well, is this culture that does this? Is this or is this biology? And the answer is really just so simple. We come in biologically a certain way. We're different biologically. However, culture can either support those biological differences or it can interfere with the healthy development of those biological differences. And I think that's what you do, Michael, in your awareness for parents and teachers is how can we support boys in being boys and girls in being healthy girls? But if you don't understand our biological requirements to have health and to feel good about ourselves and self-esteem and have a sense of identity, if you don't understand what boys need and how they're different from girls and what girls need, those children are not going to get what they need. They're going to grow up with low self-esteem. And now what we see in teenagers is this whole confusion about identity. And when you are not clear about who I am, when it's not rooted in biology, then you need extra reassurance and affirmation, and which basically means my feelings get hurt easily. And when your feelings are getting hurt easily, which I see people in their 20s getting their feelings hurt easily, if they don't get a lot of affirmation for how wonderful they are, how good they are, what a great job they did. These are all symptoms of low self-esteem because we don't already have a strong sense of self, which ultimately comes from a family. And when I look at a lot of the challenges we have as parents is a lot of women grew up in families where there wasn't a father. So they don't have a clear understanding that men and women are different. If you grow up, you're a little girl, a little boy, and you grow up without a father, you don't understand how amazingly supportive fathers are just by their detachment. Now, detachment is not indifference. It's not being upset about things. It's a peacefulness. There's a calm, there's a clarity, and there's a loyalties, there's a dedication, but it's not so much emotionally expressive. And so if you're just growing up with a mother, you don't understand the value of a man's differences from a mother's or a woman's. And therefore, a lot of these people are being taught that most males are narcissistic. It's like women even think today, is my husband narcissistic? Is the man I'm dating narcissistic? Just because they assume that a man's stoicness at times, his need for detachment, his need to take care of himself first, they say, oh, he's just selfish or he's uncaring or he's unloving. And that has nothing to do with the reality in most men. However, if you treat a man like he's unloving and unsupportive, it can make him unsupportive. One of the ideas that was big in Men Are From Mars was, and still is men go to their caves. Now every man's got a cave, whatever. Women would come to me and say, thank you for writing that book, because now I know when my husband's ignoring me, he's not interested in me. He's just taking his cave time, rebuilding his testosterone. Now, when I bring hormones into it, rebuilding his testosterone, he needs to feel very independent. Then he can come out of the cave and be warm, friendly, and loving. We have that requirement, which is to take space for ourselves. And whereas females, biologically, they have a completely different need. And we see this in science in terms of when a woman's experiencing adrenaline, just not cortisol, that's the high stress, but just adrenaline, what happens at that point is that she has 300% increase of blood flow to the emotional part of the brain compared to a man. A man will detach. It doesn't mean he's unloving, unsupportive. It just he needs to think about stuff. Let me think about it. Okay. Let me take some time. Let me be on my own for a while. That's detachment, not indifference. Women interpret detachment as indifference and are afraid of it, because when women detach, it's usually they're pretty pissed off at you. They're angry with you. So that, we have our own experience and we project that onto our partners, and it's completely different. He's just in his cave doing what he needs to do. Whereas for women, with this increase of emotionality, what often happens is men will judge her as being overreactive and try to calm her down, saying, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You shouldn't feel that way, but I'll solve the problem for you. You can look at it this way, trying to talk her out of a process which is natural for her to experience an emotional reaction of anger or frustration or disappointment or concern or worry or regret or embarrassment. These are all these strong emotions that a woman will have during adrenaline. Then what happens is, in order to lower her stress level, she needs to talk about it. If she doesn't talk about those emotions, then she will go into a cortisol state. And then if she has chronic cortisol, then she will detach. So detachment is a big deal for a woman. A man detaches like that and he comes back right away. And the other, I think we'll shift to our teenage children, but the bottom line here is that these differences do not exist in that to that degree, what I'm just talking about, but they're still there, even in little boys and little girls.
Right.
But what we need to know is that with little boys and little girls, the first 2 years of life, a boy, he will make the same testosterone levels of a grown man.
Wow.
And that's to form his brain. Okay. That's going to help develop his male brain. Then for the next 10 years or 12 years till puberty, his testosterone drops to the same as a little girl. So this whole idea of boys need to cry and express emotion, sure, that's fine. But later after they hit puberty, what happens at puberty is that a boy's testosterone increases 10 to 20 times. 10 to 20 times. We are a different species requiring a different kind of support as teenagers. And even prior to that, even though we don't have the great need for testosterone, there needs to be not as much of a focus on a boy expressing emotion. No, not shaming emotion. That's the problem of shaming. You never shame a boy for emotion, but you don't encourage this subjective looking in. For males, it's all about looking out more. And for girls, it's more about looking in to feel heard, to feel seen. This is just this polarity of masculine, feminine, and general ways. But one of the things that frustrates me, I'll put it that way, is when I hear these simplistic ideas many times. I'm sure you've heard this, Michael, which is, all these dysfunctional males is because they didn't get to cry as little boys. Right. That is just complete nonsense. I've taught in the prisons. I've talked to most dysfunctional males on this planet, pure narcissist, evil, and also just messed up. And you look into their childhood, it wasn't they didn't have a chance to cry, is that they had a lot to cry about. Okay. Wow. That's the trauma. The trauma is mom and dad not getting along. I mean, to give an example, I remember one guy in San Quentin, I'm processing him with the group. And his trauma was when he's a little boy, dad was violent, beating up on mom. He went and got a gun, his father's rifle, and shot his father. And the bullet went through the father and killed the mother as well. I mean, what a trauma that you live your life, the abandonment, the shame, the guilt, all that stuff. These kids had a lot to cry about, but not being able to cry about it is not the problem. It's not having the love and support that we need as children growing up. And one of the biggest things, and I know a lot of parents are listening, the greatest gift you can ever give your son or your daughter is that they see mom and dad interacting in a way that seems loving and supportive. And if we look at actually the research of divorce, that's one of the reasons divorce can be so hard, although there's other reasons as well, is that once you have problems that you couldn't solve together, they don't just go away when you live in different houses. so you start bad-mouthing the ex. That's just ripping a child in two. There's a father and a mother in every child. The father's issues, the mother's issues are in there. And if adults can't deal with that conflict with harmony and love, how can you expect a child to make peace with those parts of them? So this is very challenging.
Yeah. Hey, John, so John, let's take a break and then come back. I want to especially hear about the teen. But I know we got to take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break. We've got Dr. John Gray with us, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and a host of other books, right? But that was sort of the foundational one. And such a great metaphor, by the way. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We're going to tease that out a little bit more. We'll be back with you in just a moment. So, John, your metaphor is such a good one that it's almost like we're on different planets. We speak a different language. So let's kind of do two things here in the next several minutes. Let's talk to moms who come from Venus and they've got all these little Martians running around in their house. And these Martians are various ages. You've kind of given us a general overview. What are some other things that moms from Venus should know about their Martians as they are growing up that maybe they don't quite perceive? And then we'll do the same thing for dads with all the little girls from Venus in their homes.
That sounds great. And so one thing that shows up very strong is another one of the chapters in Men Are From Mars, which is don't give unsolicited advice. Moms, you always say, my children don't listen to me. It's because you're always telling them what to do, and you're telling them what to think, and you're telling them what's wrong, and you're telling them what's good. Don't talk so much about them. Okay. You see, it's basically ask for their help. Help me with this. Help me with that. Let's do this together. the children are fighting. I suggest moms never say to a boy or a little girl, what women will say is, "You're not listening to me." And what they really mean is, "You're not obeying me." so, but they say you're not listening. And those little kids, they know, I heard you. I'm just not doing what you're saying. So it makes no sense for you to tell me you're not listening to me. And what I suggest at those times, just to make one adjustment, and instead of saying you're not listening, try saying something along the lines of, right now, I want you to cooperate. We're a family, and this is how we do things. So it's like, this is inside of it. They just don't know what's there. I've seen kids all fussy and everything. And I said, now, right now, I want you to cooperate. We're a family. We take turns. We share. This is how we do things. They don't know how things are done. You may have told them 100 times. They still don't know if they're still not doing it, because they are programmed to obey. It's when we give these confusing messages, they stop. And so one of the things is telling them what to do all the time rather than asking for help, letting them know, this is what I want. This is how we do it. Would you do this? Or could you do this? Or right now, what I want you to do is, you can be the boss in that sense. You can say that, or you can also ask, you can go back and forth. But it's important that we're very clear in our messaging. And this whole idea that I first became aware of this with couples, where women would say to their husbands, "You're not listening." Of course, I'm listening to what you say. Why would you say that? But the reason they say it is for a different reason, is that we as men will tend to interrupt and give solutions. And she says, "You don't understand. You're not listening," because she still has so much more to say. Women often leave the good stuff later. They build up to it. They do a lot of foreplay before they get to what they really want to say. And men are like, right to the point, get to the point. But here you are, mom, you've got these little boys, and you just find yourself saying, "Put this away. Don't do this. Don't do that." Boys don't like to be told what to do. So if you have to do that, do it sparingly, create space for them to make their own decisions. And this is where we learn as teenagers, which is consequences. Look, you do what you want, but if you do this, this is the consequence. Consequences are good, but you give them the choice. If you want to do this, then that's going to happen. And let them experience consequences. If you don't want to put on your jacket, okay, I want you to put on your jacket. If you want to put on, you're going to get sick. And then look in the other direction. That's another tool. It's just, don't fight with your kids. Make the message. They hear you. Let them make their choices, and let them go out and let it be cold. Let them put an extra jacket in the car for when they get cold or whatever. But there's this whole thing we have as parents. We want to feel like we're controlling everything, as opposed to go with the flow. They're intelligent. They're highly intelligent. Research shows that we all start out as geniuses. Our brains are really big, and they shrink down. And because we stop thinking for ourselves. We just follow orders. You can start right with a little boy or a little girl right away. And you say, if you walk in the street, you're going to get run over by a car, and then look another direction. If you look at them, this is interesting. If you're going to walk in the street, you're going to get run over by a car, and you look at them, they'll still be disobeying you because they feel like, oh, your energy's on them. They'll resist. Just make the statement, look the other way. And of course, if it's something dangerous, look more. But you want to just give space for children to find the part of them which is self-motivated. So many children are not self-motivated, and we see it more and more. The more you tell your children what to do, the more they lose this ability to be self-motivated. So that's one thing I would do. I would also, for a mom with a little boy, I would rarely say to him, "And how do you feel?" What I would say to him is, "So what do you think about that?" Instead of, "How do you feel about that?" Okay, so what are you going to do about that? And when they ask you questions, you basically, "Well, what should I do about this?" "Well, what do you think I would say?" Or, "What do you think?" Always ask them first what they think before you say anything. And I do this with my daughter as well, even grown-up daughters. They'll come to me with their problems, and I'll listen. I'll ask questions. "Well, tell me more." And then they say, okay, now you've listened. I want to know what you think. I mean, they really want to know what I think, because I'm paid to give talks. I tell people what I think. But with my children, I don't tell them anything unless they ask me. And this was what I found to be the case when my kids were going through junior high and high school, whatever. The parents were talking. Parents would call me to find out what's going on with all the kids, because my daughters would always talk to me. And the reason my daughters talk to me is that I don't give them a lot of advice unless they really, really ask for it. And even then I'll say, "And what do you think?"
Wow. So Michael, one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about, and I know John was hinting at that, I love this think versus feel, because boys have a harder time accessing their feeling and putting feelings to words.
Well,
Right. It
okay,
takes.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you asking me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's asking you,
Michael.
So I'll
Yeah.
back off.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a word and then send it back to you, John.
Yep.
I think what Tim you're referring to is a couple things there, right? One is that girls and women have word centers on both sides of the brain and
Yep.
throughout the brain, so they have more connectivity of all this stuff to words. And then the other is the speed, right? Because the female brain's already doing most of its work in the frontal, which is where the word centers are. So whereas the male, we're doing stuff further back. Is that what you were referring to, Tim?
Yeah. And I think John's hitting on that. The feel thing it's much harder. It's sort of the deer in the headlights. And I think it goes, John, to a lot of moms wonder, why don't my boys talk more to me? I feel like I can sit down with my daughter and have really long conversations, and I get monosyllabic grunts from my son, especially once he turns 13.
Your boys don't talk much. Yeah. Well, by the way, and I give an example, first of all, I have a friend for 40 years. I don't know how we've all moved to different cities, but we always end up together, like a best friend, 40 years. And he's always complaining. He says, my wife always wants me to always talk. What's there to talk about? And then I'm sitting there, I listen to him and I kind of go, yeah, but every week we get together, we always talk. And then he says, well, why is that? And my answer is very clear, because I don't care if you talk. There's a space, not somebody pushing at you. And for women to understand this, just think if a man's always pushing to you to have sex, whoa, give me the space, give me the time. It's the same thing for men when it comes to thinking or talking. He needs time to think about it sometimes. And so when you're, another example is you're talking to your son or you're talking to your husband, doesn't matter. We're all wired up the same. And, you ask him a question, he doesn't say anything. You just let the space be there as if it's normal. And then you can say as a woman, so you're thinking about what I said. And that will help him anchor into his ability to talk. And he'll say, yes. I have a funny example of this. I was one of my Oprah show appearances, Oprah, when she was trying to be a therapist in the beginning, and she'd be asking people, how do you feel? How do you feel? It's a bit, how do you feel phrase, right? Big therapy phrase. And she stopped doing that after a while. It was dead TV time once you start talking about feelings, either too much talking or no talking. But here's this couple, and she's complaining about she got married and now her husband still has this night out with the guys. And she's like, how can he do this? We have a family, we have to take, our relationship. And so she's going on and on complaining about her husband. And Oprah's saying, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about that? And then she says to the man, well, how do you feel about what she said? And literally the guy could not talk. He was just, he was trying hard to get a word out of his mouth. And I said, so Oprah, here's an example of the difference between men and women. Just ask that man, what does he think about what his wife just said? Ask him that question. So she says, what do you think about that? Immediately he started talking. I mean, he said, it's completely ridiculous. Nobody gave me a manual that says I can't have male friends after I get married. What is this about? I think she's too needy. How's she demanding so much? I mean, aren't we supposed to be whole people? We come together to share. The guy had a lot to say, but you had to just find the nozzle is, what do you think about that?
You kind of wonder if that marriage lasted after that. Oprah.
No, he's a good guy. I would. It was just bad counseling. Is expecting a man to respond like a female.
That's right.
Same thing with your little boys. They still have that wiring. So, even though our hormones are pretty much the same for that time, a boy has a vulnerability, a sensitivity that he's going to lose to some extent as he goes through puberty.
Yeah.
Because testosterone, when it goes up, it's not narcissistic. It's just being able to be detached temporarily from your emotions if there's a problem to solve. I mean, this is really
hey, John, I'm going to stop you there because this is what I want you to talk about this, but we have to have another break.
All right.
This is great stuff.
Good. So, Michael, keep that question in your head. And then we will circle back to dads about dad Martians with their daughters, because both of you have raised girls. I've raised a daughter. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dr. John Gray. You're listening to the Wonder Parenting Podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. Back in a moment. All right, Michael, you basically came out of your chair with excitement over a comment that your friend just made. And so tease it out so that John can respond.
Yeah, I knew we had to go to break, and I didn't want to cut this short. So talk, John, about this is so interesting. What happens and the importance of testosterone and estrogen, et cetera, in the teen years. You and I were chatting about it the other day, and people need to know about this. Talk about that, would you?
It's so important. And then we can also talk about what fathers with their daughters in the 10 years or before that. It's pretty much the same. Okay. But for the teen years, for boys, it's a big difference. Okay. For boys, they go from a level of testosterone that increases 20 times, 10 to 20 times, which means they individuate. They need to feel on their own. They need to separate from their family, and they need to separate from girls. Okay. They're playing little girls to some extent before that. Here, they need to hang out with guys. It's so important that a teen boy, he's also disidentifying from his father. He has his father. That's a backup. That's like a safety net. He needs mentors. He needs supervision. He needs men who inspire him. My mother was very smart about this. She signed me up for karate. She signed me up for judo. She signed me up for boxing. She helped me have my own little company. My first little company was making cards for people. The next one was sewing outfits in the karate gym. I can make money that way. I also had a paper route. My mom helped me with that. All of these activities, she did this because she wanted me be around male mentors, men who are grown up, who had their lives somewhat together, and they were masculine. They were living as men. Boys need to be exposed to functional males, and that is how he identifies himself. His testosterone goes up. He needs to also identify his ability to be in a group of males as what is his role in that. I'm like this guy. So this is when guys need to be with guys. This is a developmental stage. You know, when Maslow talked about our developmental stages, he says survival, that's our first 7 years of life. Then there's security, which is play and fun, feeling safe with family and friends. That's early stages of school. Then you get to puberty, and this is where you define yourself as a male or as a female. And you need to be around a lot of males so you can say, I'm like that. I'm not like this. I'm like that. I'm like that. I'm like that. So repeated identification with other males helps form your sense of self. That's very important. Eventually you get to 21, and now that foundation of I'm a guy like other guys, but how am I different from the guys? And that's the beginning of the journey of the prefrontal cortex development from 21 to 28, where you begin to individuate from other guys. What am I good at? What's my role? And for all self-esteem for boys, teamwork is very important. This whole need for competition. I've got a whole book on my shelves how competition is bad. Yeah, for girls, they need to be in a non-competitive environment. For boys, they need competition to measure themselves against others. So what you can do is you can be, and it also produces testosterone. It supports testosterone production. So if I'm on a team, my team, we want to beat the other team, but we're going to follow the rules. It's all part of the game. And I get to be a winner as a male because I'm on the winning team, or I'm on the losing team, but it's not all my fault. So this is a wonderful thing for team sports, for competitive team sports. I'm not really into competitive, up to puberty. Puberty is where I need to begin to shine as a male by being a part of other men with my team. I'm a part of it. What am I good at? What am I not good at? This is a developmental stage. And of course, there's the curiosity about girls, but they're on the other side. You know, there's a polarity that sets up where there's a natural attraction between the two. But the most important thing is that I bond with other males, and parents can create that by putting your children on teams and also in situations where there's male mentors, coaches, or business people guiding the male. We need to be associated with that. Mentors is key. For girls, same thing. They need to have girl things that they do. And what happened to the girls, which is disaster, which is back in the 90s, I watched it with my daughters. There was so much pressure from the feminists on free sex. They stopped dating. They did group dating. Okay. They I mean, basically, if you go out with a guy, there was so much pressure to I forget the phrase, that we're going to hang out together, whatever it was.
Hook up.
We're going to hook up. All this pressure to like have casual sex, which is completely against their nature, that then they couldn't be alone with a guy. They couldn't even say it's a date. You know, you couldn't even have that natural attraction. You had to be in a group of safety, which is girls need to have the safety to be able to say no to sex, but our society made them prudes if they did, which is a real problem. But as far as, these are the challenges. Girls need to be with girls. They need to do girl things. They shouldn't be focusing on making money during that time. If they can, but the main focus should be on relationship and nurturing activities and things that make them happy and things that make them fulfilled. Dancing, singing, drama, writing, creative things. These are all very feminine aspects of their feminine brain that can develop at that time, not competing with males, trying to get your MBA when you're a teenager. This is, I moved out of Pacific Palisades a long time ago because my kids in grade school were being prepared for Harvard. Just wait a second, my kids have a childhood, we get too goal oriented with what our children's future is going to be, produces huge pressure on our kids, whether it be girls, and more pressure for girls, because see, they need to develop the estrogen. And when they hit puberty, that's a really hard time for girls. And one of the things is that all that extra estrogen makes them aware of what they're missing. See, estrogen is a hormone that makes you aware of what you need. It makes you aware of what you're missing. And particularly at the time of ovulation, 5 days before ovulation, those girls are going to be, going wacko if they're not getting the support they need to be feminine. Okay. And the feminine side of us needs to feel, I have help. I have help. The male side of us wants to feel like, look what I can do, what I can learn, what I can accomplish, what I can achieve. And I know these are broad strokes. Everything I say for males, a little bit for females. Everything I say for females, a little bit for males. But you have to know the right direction to go to, because there really are these distinct differences. And yet we want to encourage and acknowledge our own child's differences in that process. But that's for them to journey through, giving opportunity to be in groups of males, for girls to be in groups of females.
John, do you have a particular book that you have written that speaks to parents about these issues, or something that you would recommend?
Well, I love Michael Gurian's books for sure.
Thank you.
I've been a fan ever since he wrote that wonderful book, and the other books as well. I also have a book which doesn't focus primarily on differences for parenting. It focuses more on communication skills with your children. I mentioned a few, and that's called Children Are From Heaven, a positive parenting book. I'm a fan of raising your children without needing to punish them. Now, if you have to have really good communication skills to raise a child without needing to punish. And I give those communication skills in there. I personally was the fifth boy. So when the four boys before me almost went to jail, my mother convinced my father, let's not whip Johnny when he makes a mistake. Okay, this is Texas. You pull out the whip and you whip him. So they did a thing where they were never going to punish me. So I got massive freedom as a child, and we're not going to punish him. We're not going to give him shaming talks. We're just going to put him in the hands of God, is what my mother said. And which I turned out different. And they all to this day are pissed off that I got that support. And when I was growing up, they took it out on me. So I had this really wonderful experience with my mother and father, but not with my brothers, because they were all jealous. My dad would say to me, when he'd say, okay, go to his room to get spanked, and he'd whip the chair, and I'm supposed to make a noise. And my brothers figured this out, and then they would take it out on me. But so I went, about 15 years ago, I did a documentary on, and I can't find it now, but I remember we were filming it, and I had boys and girls who had never been punished and children who were punished. And it was an amazing moment. I said to one child, I said, do you think it's a good thing that your parents punish you? And the child said, yes, that's because they love me. Well, where'd they learn that? And it is because their parents love them. They just don't know a different way. And I asked another child, well, do you think it's a good thing your parents punish you? And why do you think it's a good thing? And the child said, because it lets me know what I did is wrong. Okay. I turned to one of the children in the other group and I said, oh, how do you know that what you did is wrong? And the child so innocently says, oh, my parents just tell me. It's a simple truth. But if you have good communication skill where children actually hear what you say and it activates the part of them that wants to please in a healthy way, then they learn their lesson. Punishment is not necessary if somebody can hear the message that they made a mistake, and it activates their need to please. But part of that, and this is what my book's about, is you have to learn to hear your children. If you learn how to actually hear your children, you're not dismissing feelings, the whole science to this. But let's say a child's upset and you give them ice cream. You didn't give that child the opportunity to learn how to go from upset back to feeling good, without giving them what they want, or
Right.
without punish them, or without telling them they shouldn't want that. Children have the ability, we all have the ability, we just don't develop it, which is to be upset and come back to peace and calm. Now, one of the other books that I personally like, a lot of people have read it, was a bestseller, is Hunt, Gather, Parent. I watched, I didn't have all that extra skills, some of them better than mine, and applying it with my grandchildren. But when the child cries, rather than trying to talk the child out of it, or even sympathize, oh, poor baby, whatever, and this, just become quiet, be peaceful within yourself, because they resonate. They absorb everything your reaction is. So just be peaceful, and the child will cry, reach the hands up, hold the child, walk outside if you have trees in your neighborhood or flowers in the garden, and just go stand there. And the child learns at an early age how to comfort themselves just by being in nature. See, that's the thing. We just don't live in nature anymore, but nature will calm us down. And we know that, again, more science on that, which is just walking through a forest of trees has a huge effect on your immune system, a positive effect on your immune system. So not even having to use so many words, we talk too much. And particularly, no, I won't say that to my wife, because with girls, and again, teen girls, we didn't address that, but dads with teen girls, the whole key, and so many dads have thanked me for this, not just from my children's book, but also my Men Are From Mars book, is I just learned how to listen. The act of listening is actually a profound doing. It's a very Zen thing, which is to do without doing. It's the most powerful thing is presence. People are talking more about presence. Presence is very real and very important, particularly for females. When you're listening to a female, is to ask more questions, give less advice. It's just simply, don't give so much advice to your sons. Don't give so much advice to your daughter. They're smart, they're capable, and they have the ability to come back to feeling good without you trying to convince them. You don't need to feel that way. You can think of it this way. You can think of it that way. Even to this day, my kids are upset. I'll listen to them. And my responses are usually to feel what they feel as best I can and feel empathy, but more so a compassion. When you're dealing with a child, it's not so much empathy you feel. Ideally, what you want to feel is compassion, which is I hear your pain and I have a positive outlook. I'm optimistic, but I don't have to say, don't worry about it. I just have to hold the space of being optimistic, knowing that this is a passing emotion. Everything's going to be okay. I'm not alarmed in any way. And then to ask more questions. And particularly with girls, the more words they can say when they're experiencing negative emotions, the more estrogen gets produced. And for females, after puberty, surges of estrogen actually lower their stress level. That's why a woman can talk about problems and feel better, even if there's no solution to the problem.
Right. Well, John, this has been so interesting and, of course, very affirming for many of the things that Michael likes to talk about. For those of you who are on our Facebook page, and if you're not, just go to Facebook and put in Wonder Parenting and ask to join. I will put a link to John's book for you, Children Are From Heaven, and you'll be able to find all the other stuff that he's written as well. And John, it's been a real treat for me to get to meet you today, to listen in. And we sure appreciate you. We're looking forward to having you back in a couple months. You're going to be doing a special thing with Michael that we'll talk about that then. So thank you. And Michael, as always, thank you for letting us put your name on the show. Yep. And thank you all for listening. We will be back with you next time. The Wonder Parenting Podcast, Brain Science Approach to Parenting. Make sure you tell your friends.